Wi-Fi. Most of us don't realize how important it really is until it goes out. And in today's generation, wireless is everything. Whether it's checking a text, making a phone call, or even watching this video right now, Wi-Fi is everywhere, and it's become so much more important as we become more mobile as a civilization. The old adage used to be, well, plug it into a switch or find another outlet, right? But that's just not the case now in 2025. Wi-Fi is everywhere, it's expected and it's demanded, and it's critical. And when Extreme reached out to us to test their next generation access points, we were thrilled to be able to put these through the ringer. So watch this video, and we're going to go over some of the pros, some of the cons, and what Extreme really has to offer in the next gen wireless space. Alright, first, let's break down the models and their specs. The AP3000 is your high-density champion. It's a Wi-Fi 6E access point with dual 5 GHz and 6 GHz radios. It's designed to be compact but powerful, and it's perfect for situations where you want to deploy a lot of units, like one in every classroom or one in every dorm room. Next would be the AP4020. This is the versatile mid-range model, and it features two 2x2 radio design across the 2.4, 5, and 6 GHz, giving you reliable coverage with efficiency. Think of it kind of as more the all-rounder for your offices, mixed use environments where you need steady performance without it being super overkill. And then finally, the AP5020. This is the powerhouse and Extreme's first Wi-Fi 7 access point. It comes with a 4x4 radio design, supports 320 megahertz channels in the 6 gigahertz band, and includes advanced features like multi-link operation for lower latency and higher throughput. This one's designed for high demand environments, large venues, arenas, or heavily connected office spaces where you really just need bleeding edge performance. So, I get what you're saying. Matt, these are wireless access points. How much different can they really be from any other wireless access point that I'd grab off the shelf and put in my environment? And I think there's a couple things to that, so I kind of thought the same question when I was doing my initial research for this video, and I wanted to find out some use cases that these access points were actually being used for. And funnily enough, one of them I've actually seen before. So they have a case study on their website about the AP3000, and this was with Florida Gulf Coast University. Basically, Extreme overhauled their entire wired and wireless infrastructure, essentially getting rid of Cisco, and thousands of students in residence halls now have the reliable high-speed Wi-Fi using all of their new access points. And essentially they were able to also leverage the Fabric technology. And I don't know if you guys have seen my other video where Fabric comes into play. If not, you should definitely give that a watch. But Fabric is a protocol that Extreme is heavily developing. Again, open source standard, but Fabric comes natively into their newer switching operating systems, where essentially it's topology agnostic. You can plug a switch into here, a switch into there, it'll just kind of come up, it'll do whatever you need it to do. There's no more spanning tree, no more configuring VLANs and tagging trunks, right? All that happens in the core automatically. And what's cool is that these access points actually support Fabric auto attach, where you just plug an access point in and your profile is automatically configured to know, okay, I need all of these VLANs tagged for all the internal traffic, right? And then I'm going to untag maybe, a specific net management VLAN for the access point itself. That's kind of really cool when you combine their product offerings. And that was one of the case studies that really stood out to me with, Florida Gulf Coast actually going like a full Extreme shop and what kind of power that brought together. That was really awesome to see. There was also another case study too for, some of their bigger access points. That was actually at Liverpool FC's Anfield Stadium. That's over 61,000 fans pretty much needing essentially seamless connectivity for, they do like mobile ticketing, cashless connections, and social media and other stuff like that. So it was pretty cool to see probably one of the biggest international stadiums use their wireless technology for some of the largest events that are being hosted there. So I think there was definitely a good precedence for these access points being used in very high throughput, high demand environments. They're not trying to be something that's more of like a mid-range product, right? It's definitely more business. It's more enterprise, right? They're definitely not like you throw these in like a small coffee shop. Even though you could use the little AP3000 and put one there if you really wanted to. it seems like they're more catering to, you know, these more high performant environments and really trying to set themselves and differentiate themselves from that. So let's go ahead in the next section. We're actually going to talk about the management and the setup. So on the management side, these access points integrate with Extreme's XIQ platform. So essentially, we're going to show you what that looks like. That's soon going to be evolving into Platform ONE. There's been a lot of hype around that, right? That's their new next generation management platform for all of their devices. And I'll show you how easy it is to simply just kind of adopt these and set them up in there. It's a really straightforward process, and actually with the new Platform ONE approach, makes things a lot more streamlined and honestly a way better experience. So let's go ahead and actually walk through setting up one of these access points, what it takes to adopt it, and some of the options that you get when setting them up. So once you get to XIQ SE, you're going to see this screen essentially where you're going to start creating your first network, right? So we're just going to create a generic site group. Once you get to the portal, you just hit the add the plus button and it'll say, do you want to make this in Cloud XIQ? We're just going to make a very generic test one for this sake. So I'm just going to call it lab testing, and then it's going to associate it with the unified IT kind of tenant as a whole. And then we're going to make our first site. So I'm just going to kind of label it something generic, main lab. Kind of got to fill all this out. Again, you can skip through this. So next, we're going to go ahead and create a building. So this will be where we're actually at. So again, I'm just kind of going to throw whatever in here for the building name. I'm just going to call it Labo 1 is the building. And next, we're going to add the floor in the building. Again, as you can see, this is getting very granular, so you can have like your floor attenuation, your map size. You can upload a custom map for each floor plan itself. And you get very, very specific with the XIQ platform. And then it'll actually ask us to onboard the device. So we're going to just go ahead and put our serial number in there to actually adopt this device. You won't need to do this every time, by the way, when you're making a new device. Once you have kind of the structure of where you want to place the devices, you just need to add serial numbers and go. Pretty much it's that simple. Again, it'll ask us the device OS, and we'll just select onboard device. So now we can see that fully added to our tenant. Of course, we don't have a floor plan, so it's not going to actually show anything there, but we have basically, we can rename the host name to whatever we want, right? We can just do like a testing access point, and we can then choose to assign it as well. And then we're just going to drag it over into the actual map, and that actually assigns it into that floor plan. And then we're just going to go ahead and finish. And there we have it. We fully adopted it. So now we actually need to assign a network policy to this device. You can see that I've already created a policy, just a generic main Wi-Fi policy. So now this access point is in our tenant with a policy applied to it. And once it boots up, it'll just phone home to the cloud and pull this policy down. Okay, so this is the actual Wi-Fi policy that I made. I just kind of made a generic one. So when you go to create a policy, though, it'll just ask you, you can create an SSID. You could say, is this a wireless policy? Is this a switching policy? You can pretty much put anything that you need in here. I just made a generic wireless policy, and then I simply just assign the device to it. I've already actually assigned the device to it, so you won't be able to see it here. So you can kind of see in the policy details, like the actual granularity that we can go through and actually set inside of this policy to the access point, device credentials, time zones, all that kind of stuff, various different policies and settings. What's the management, what's the native VLAN, stuff like that. Nothing that you really wouldn't have kind of in any other sort of access point. There are a lot of custom options though, with like really niche things like even LLDP and those kind of, even the Wi-Fi setup portion of it for the SSIDs. You just get a lot of customization through this portal. So what you guys are all waiting for, the actual real results of me running these access points for a couple of weeks here. So I decided to run the worst access point out of this lineup, not worst by any means of it, but I tried to really put the AP3000 through the ringer because I knew, right, the 5020 is going to be the Wi-Fi 7 beast, right? it's going to do everything I need it to do. So I really wanted to daily drive the 3000. So I put it all the way in this lab, this room that I have, pretty much dead center, but all the way in the back of my house. And I let it run for a couple weeks and everything worked flawlessly, right through multiple walls, all the way to the back patio, to the front porch. The radio, of course, sacrificed a little bit when I went farther because, it doesn't have that, long, super long range, the high power long range antennas, with something with like a way bigger form factor, and obviously getting a lot more leverage out of the Wi-Fi 7 access point. Saw a noticeable increase when doing things like, the band switching and stuff like that when I was roaming around. Noticed a lot more fluidity through like a 5020 series. But I mean, for the AP3000, I got some really solid numbers. I never saw my speed tests really dip below the 700 number. For reference, I only have a gig GPON connection, so it's really only like 950 at that when everyone's using it, and it could go even lower. So I actually never saw any realistic speeds that were below 700, and that was again through a wall or two. Again, as I got further away, it probably got down to about that 500 meg to 400 meg range, going really far away from it. But again, no noticeable speed performance decreases. And again, I threw everything that I had onto these, right? I tried to just load them up with clients as much that I could. So that's probably really only like the 30 or 40 devices. Again, in like a real actual like scenario, you'd be having potentially hundreds of devices connected to this. But I saw no noticeable, I tried to get every single wireless device I have. So again, probably closer to that, like, 20 number-ish, and having guests over too, right? Since I did run it for a couple of weeks, I actually did have some people over to use it and stuff like that and just kind of test it out. So I really love these splash page options too, because what was cool is you could set up a guest SSID, obviously, for your guest access, and you could do the captive portal, kind of like, a lot of other access points provide, but there's a lot of cool authentication options, a lot of cool customization options for that captive portal. It worked really, really well. So yeah, overall, actual real-world usability, I still have it running back there. It's kind of like my testing lab AP. You can kind of see it, and, I think it's going to stay. I actually really like how the form factor is for the 3000 series, because, I mean, this one is actually massive for the 5020. So, it's not something I'm going to throw up in the living room or have anytime soon. But the 3000 series, it looks great. It's a good looking access point. So the wifey approval factor was there, right? It didn't look bad. She didn't hate it. So, but yeah, overall real world usability, an extremely good piece of hardware, right? Yeah, I don't think it's gonna, it doesn't feel like it's gonna fail anytime soon, right? It's pretty solid construction. So one nice thing too that was also, I forgot to mention a little earlier, is each one of these models comes with the Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 0 port. The Ethernet 0 is the PoE, and the Ethernet 1 is kind of that redundancy backup. So each model comes with redundancy all the way to the edge, no matter if it's the 3000 or the 5020, which I thought was a really awesome addition to have that on every single access point. I think that was a really, really smart decision from them. So overall impressions for the first couple weeks, really solid. And again, I kind of use these a lot more because I have environments where these are actually deployed. So, I kind of use them on a lab basis and actually use them. And I haven't had a problem. And one cool thing too, again, with the Fabric integration, is it just makes deploying these so much easier, right? You can give them to a technician, and that's kind of half the battle, right? Is, I got to provision this port to connect to the cloud, and then I got to switch the VLAN once it connects and adopts and all that, and I got to go out and do this and do all that. And, maybe the port might not be set up right, or really it's more of a network issue, not like an access point issue. So the cool thing with Fabric is all of that, kind of being figured out through the Fabric auto attach has been a real time saver. So yeah, overall thoughts, impressions, usability, I think it's, great. Again, it's an access point, right? Like, how great can you actually make it? I think it really speaks testaments to the actual software, right? I think the XIQ platform has gone a long way. I think the Platform ONE kind of upgrade is going to be a way needed fresh breath, and it's really going to, the hardware is good. It's here. It's in the form factor, but that kind of software upgrade to complement this, I think it's going to be, it's a no-brainer, right? For K through 12, SLED, whatever kind of deployment you want to put it in, I think it's going to be a really solid pick. So, all right, so let's talk pricing and licensing. MSRP around $649 for the AP3000, $1499 for the 4020, and $2399 for the 5020. But again, that's all MSRP, so going through a reseller, which, Extreme doesn't sell direct to customer, you're going to get a deal, a discount, right? So you go through someone like CDW, you'll pretty much almost never pay that price, right? It'll usually be significantly discounted. Licensing per device as of the current platform is, I believe, around $200, $250 for that pilot license. Again, you'll never pay that. Again, that's an MSRP number. That's just what I can pull, but if you actually went to go talk to someone to buy that, it's going to be cheaper than that. But under Platform ONE, from what I was able to gather from Extreme, the licensing model is completely changing under Platform ONE. So it's not just a right-to-use license anymore. The model actually bundles benefit like the ultra-fast RMA and the GTAC support and much more in the actual licensing cost. So it's no longer like you pay for a device, you pay for the platform, you pay for the license for the device, and then you pay for like support. Most people see it as like a renewal thing, but they're actually separate. It's not going to be the case in Platform ONE in the newer licensing scheme. It's all just one, right? The license for the device covers the actual RMA and support for it. So it's all one transparent renewal cost. There's no, subbing things out, which is really nice, right? To consolidate all of that into just what is the ongoing maintenance fee for having this piece of hardware in my environment, no strings attached. So one of the most important things with all of the licensing talk is if you forget to renew the licensing, what actually happens? There are platforms that will actually shut your networking equipment off and turn it into a brick. This is not the case, and this is why I really like Extreme's kind of motto with the licensing is they will never turn your equipment off, right? You bought the physical piece of hardware. The license, again, is more just for the configuration and changes, right? So if you have your environment and you're good and you're running, technically you don't need to renew it if you didn't want to make any changes further. Obviously, you're going to want to keep it because, we never said anything the same in IT and we never need to change anything. So, of course, it is nice that they don't become paperweights and just physical pieces of hardware if, Linda in finance forgets to make the PO for her renewal or whatnot. So that is a very nice part. And I will say, under the Platform ONE licensing model, they will also be changing how licensing works. So an access point or an edge switch or a smaller tier device will actually cost a lot less than like a core switch or something like that. Because currently, as the pricing and licensing is now, is everything uses a pilot license, and that pilot license is just a generic cost and every device uses it. Well, that doesn't make sense because I have some devices doing insane BGP, core routing, core switching, and then like these smaller edge access points devices costing the same to license. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So I think this new licensing scheme under Platform ONE is actually also going to save you a lot of money. So I would only expect it to get better as it goes in the future. And, that's really all there is for the licensing. Again, just purely the hardware cost and purely the licensing cost. There is no support contract renewal. There is no next day RMA add-on that you have to add to checkout. It's just simply all encased inside of that license. So that is very nice. I do like consolidation and them ramping down the price if it's a smaller device. I think that's really neat. So you're not paying the same for every, device. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I like it. I think it'll be really good. Again, it's a huge K through 12 SLED application, right? There's a whole lot of pre-negotiated contracts with these kinds of equipment and stuff like that. So I think it's overall, if you have to pick a licensed enterprise grade product, I think it's going to be the right horse to back. I mean, we can only see other vendors getting more expensive, more, cloggy. They're not designing, they're not innovating. We've kind of seen that Gartner Magic Quadrant, as we all like to see in the big buzzword, and it kind of shows that there's not a whole lot of innovation in this space anymore. It's kind of just like, how much can we push out for the same price that we're charging, or charge more out of the client? So I kind of like Extreme's approach to it. I think it's really good. They get a lot of experts on board in their staff, developing, hand in lock, all of this equipment, all of these protocols, all of this kind of, unified sort of environment and ecosystem that all of this kind of rides on. So, again, if I had to pick one, I love the access points. Hardware's a piece of hardware, but I think what really kind of differentiates them is really kind of their software and their management plane, and really just a lot of the insights and analytics you get through it as well. Overall, I think it's a great product. So we talked about some of the pros. What are some of the cons that I've experienced? On the hardware side of a technical for the access point, I actually didn't experience any interruptions, which kind of sucked because I tried to, and it didn't really work. They're pretty resistant to other wireless interference. So again, I tried to emulate like worst case scenarios, and I just couldn't get them to fail. So that was kind of a pro, I guess you could say, but more or less I think of a con is, you wouldn't ever be able to use this in like a mom and pop scenario. And I was going to field them some questions like, do you guys ever plan on breaking into like more small medium and stuff like that? Because these definitely are enterprise grade, and they come with an enterprise grade price tag for sure. No doubt about that. I think that would be one of my biggest cons, is just the price restrictiveness of it. But I get it, right? It's not meant to go in someone's house, right? You're not going to hang these up inside of, your friend's house and just give him a pilot license and tell him his AP costs $200 a year to manage. He's going to be like, what the heck? I'll just stick to my crappy little, CenturyLink modem. So again, the product for this scenario I think is very good. I do wish there was a kind of more affordable sort of, small medium business option, because I really do like their software, and I feel like if more people got access to it and it was more accessible, I think they'd be even more popular than they are now. Again, still kind of a niche heavy hitter in the enterprise, right? They're really in that upper echelon of devices, but that would be one of my biggest cons, is more the accessibility of the actual hardware itself, just due to the pricing. But again, I can't control that, right? Any enterprise deployment these are in, I haven't seen an actual con of the hardware itself. Now let's get into software cons. I am very mixed feelings on XIQ. I run XIQ SE for a lot of the on-prem management for a lot of our other devices we've deployed. We've worked with multiple, dozens of other Extreme Networks integrations. And I like XIQ SE, but I hate XIQ SE because when it works, it's really, really cool. When it doesn't work, it's very, very annoying. And rest assured, I talked to them about this, and I think Platform ONE is going to answer a lot of that. My only concern is how this is going to move forward with an on-prem scenario. I have to be very frank with it. I don't know if there's going to be a Platform ONE on-prem version. I'd be very curious to see if that's going to be a thing. That would be something I would love to actually see, or XIQ SE, the on-prem version, get a complete overhaul to look like that. So just for a lot of our on-prem customers, like, what does that look for? Because again, not everyone wants to go cloud, right? Some people actually want to self-host their own controllers and do all of it on-prem, which is fine, right? I don't think that's ever going to go away. I'm just curious, are they going to get the same software benefits that the people in the cloud are getting? It'd be really cool if they did. So that would be one of my only reservations, alongside the other con of just the pricing and affordability. But I enjoyed it, right? I think Platform ONE is going to be really solid. So curious to see what you guys think about this product. What are some of the questions that you guys have about some of their equipment, maybe where they're going, Let us know in the comments too if any of you guys are actually using their equipment too in some of your enterprise environments. If you guys thought, you know, it was really good, or you guys had problems, or you guys like Platform One. I don't know if any of you guys have gotten to play with it yet, so it all looks pretty promising. But let us know down in the comments what you guys think. Again, a huge shout out for Extreme for sending these over for us to sample and test and play around with, and as well as just getting us access to some of the software to also review some of that as well. So thanks again for watching. This is Matt from Unified IT. See you in the next one.